Thank you, Teresa. And well, this is an honor to have a German teacher in our series. And also, it's a privilege to have the 2020 ACTFL National World Language Teacher of the Year finalist from Arizona. Melanie Mello is a German teacher in Chandler High School. And she was also Teacher of the Year in Arizona with the organization, the Arizona Language Association, ASLA, and she is today with us, and we really appreciate accepting the invitation to this series. Melanie, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to my webinar From Wallflower to Rampensau, How to Use Theater-Based Pedagogy in the World Language Classroom. I also would like to take a moment to thank the Indiana Foreign Language Teacher Association, Indiana Language Roadmap, and Mr. Herrera for inviting me to present in this webinar series. My name is Melanie Mello, and I have been teaching. One second, now it's my PowerPoint presentation that's moving. Now, here we go. My name is Melanie Mello, and I've been teaching German for the past 12 years at the middle school, high school, and collegiate level. And as you maybe have already heard in my online video, my teaching career started in South Bend, Indiana, and really took off in 2013 when I was awarded with the Rising Star Teacher of the Year award by the Indiana chapter of AATG. In the same year, I also received the German Embassy Teacher of Excellence Award. And with this award came a very nice perk of being able to spend 2 weeks in Germany and participate in a workshop through the Goethe Institute. I chose a workshop on theater in the German as a second language classroom. And I had a couple of reasons for that. First, I had participated with my students in the annual Theaterfest by Valparaiso University. And in 2012, and I brought my little award with me, or my students' award for that matter. In 2012, we won second place for our performance of Amy and the Detektive. And I'm very competitive in my nature. And so I had hoped, by participating in this workshop, next year we will be returning in 2013 and, having the opportunity of winning first place. That unfortunately didn't happen. But you know what? You can't always be a winner, so lesson learned. I had another reason for attending this workshop, and that was that I was consistently losing my voice. Usually around Wednesday, I was hoarse. By Friday, my voice was gone, and I had luckily the weekend to, regain a voice so that I would be ready to teach on Monday. So what I really had to figure out is, broaden my bag of tools with more tools of how to move from a somewhat teacher-centered classroom to a more student-centered classroom. And this is really what I'm sharing with you today, like ways of how to create a theater-based pedagogy classroom. I will talk a little bit about the background of embodied cognition, and I will share with you some of my favorite activities that I'm doing with my students in the classroom. And then we just sum it up to see what we have learned with regards to the impact that theater-based pedagogy has onto the world language classroom. So if you are a little older, just like me, you probably acquired a second language in a kind of more traditional way. What I mean with traditional way is a so-called cognitivist approach, meaning that you probably acquired the new language by memorizing long vocabulary list, doing many grammar drills, like conjugating over and over and over again a verb. And so here the focus is really on recalling and retention. However, cognitive scientists increasingly find the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding that it really happens through the experiences, through our body and through our senses. And so there are a couple proofs of such. So I know if you have a pen right next to you, but if you would like to try it out, you can feel free and try it out. So similar as in the picture, if you put a pen or pencil right between your teeth, it forces you to have a forced smile. So interestingly enough, the signal is sent to your brain that you're right now in a happy mode. So even though, it's obviously a forced smile, the signal is still, oh, she's happy, And so when you look at the level of stress hormones, the level of stress hormones actually goes down. Even though it's fake, it still does work. And another example would be this cute little video down here, you might know it. It's of a little girl giving herself a pep talk. Okay, so an awesome pep talk here. I can do anything. And so it's again like very interesting, this body-mind connection. I mean, that girl truly means it when she says it. I love my shoes, I love my house, I love my family. I can do everything. I can do everything. I mean, you would say, you know, it's kind of a little weird, you know, to like give yourself these affirmations and whatnot. How far does it actually influence you and your mood? And it truly actually does. So my mom, interestingly enough, I know I should maybe not share it. She might be watching right now, but she does something very similar in the morning when she gets up and she stands in the bathroom in front of the mirror. She always tells herself, "Oh man, you look so good." You know, it just really builds your self-image and just like your perception of yourself. And again, so that idea that the mind is not only connected to the body, but also the body influencing the mind. So when we talk about embodied cognition, we refer to learning something through the use of our body. So our body is a physical agent, and it is experimental, it is participatory, and the teacher's like job here is to guide the students and to scaffold the learning with the goal in mind that you know, for the students to communicate in the target language successfully. So how do we do this now in the world language classroom? So one sec. It's not going to my next slide. One second, sorry. Here we go. So, so how do we do this with our own classrooms? So how do we get I know everything set up so we can be successful in the classroom using theater-based activities? So it really starts with day one, with you setting expectations, with you setting rules and rituals and routines from the get-go. So what I usually do is when my students see me for the first time, first of all, I greet them at the door and I do the typical German handshake and I say, "Hallo, guten Tag, guten Morgen." And they're already irritated by this because, like, first of all, why the heck is she shaking my hand? They are germs. I know that Americans don't really like germs a lot. And so they're a little irritated by me shaking hands. And so the reason why I do this is just to really, for them to already realize, oh gosh, I have to step out of my comfort zone. And this is how I start the class. I said, hey, when you come to me to learn German, I will ask you to step out of your comfort zone. We're going to do a lot of partner work, group as a whole class, where we move with each other, interact with each other, because at the end of the day, you're hopefully here to acquire the German language fluently by the end of year 4. So when I talk about like rules and expectations, I also tell students that it's okay to make mistakes here. I hope to create a welcoming, encouraging learning atmosphere where everybody feels they can try out things, make mistakes, and not feel embarrassed about it. And I feel like drama-based activities is the easiest and best way to create that. So you probably had like students in the past who use a funny voice when they read a text. And the reason why they use that funny voice is really because they're taking on a different persona. They're a fictive character in that moment. And back in the day when when I first started teaching, I had students doing that. I was like so annoyed because I was thought like, oh, they're kind of the class clown, you know. But on the other side, I think it's actually a really smart skill for somebody to have. So when you do this fake voice and you read a text, so if you make a mistake, it's not you who makes a mistake, it's that funny voice, the fictive character who makes the mistake. And so everybody is kind of like already at that, you know, like sitting at the, what's it called now in English? At the front of that chair, you know, ready to laugh because the voice is so funny. But now when the person makes mistakes, everybody also laughs, but not at them, but with them because of the funny voice. So I feel like, you know, you have to establish these strategies to teach students how to deal with mistakes and to be like really encouraging of mistakes, because as we all know, this really only how learning can happen. The other thing is too that the teacher really needs to think about their role within the classroom. So, and I think we all agree on that one as well. So a teacher really needs to aspire to building strong relationships with their students. And how do you do that? I mean, as world language teachers, it's very easy for us to do is because we can really personalize our instruction. When we talk about clothing, we can ask them to tell us about their favorite piece of clothing that they wear. Or when we, talk about prom, it's like, hey, tell me about prom, about your prom date and whatnot. So really making activities meaningful, so the students see the value in them. And most importantly is not only personalizing the instruction, but also when you use drama-based activities in the classroom, that you as a teacher act as a model. So you have to, potentially be the actor and show the students how to do it right. And I have to tell you, I mean, I know I have a bubbly personality and whatnot. I'm a true extrovert. But before 2013, before attending this workshop, I had no idea that actually I have any talent with acting. So if you don't really see yourself as the teacher who feels comfortable in front of a class and acting something out, maybe just try it out. Give it a try and see, how you feel doing it. I know this is not for everybody. Same with like total physical response also in that direction. Not everybody can entertain a class for a whole period and, telling a story. So, but I would really encourage you just to try it out. Maybe some of the activities that I'm sharing with you here in a second. So here's, and as you will see, the activities I have chosen really guides you through year 1 to year 4. So the activities become more and more advanced. So as most of you probably start with the alphabet in the first week, just teaching the students how to pronounce the letters in the language you teach. So for instance, in German, we have the CH sound, and it can sound 2 ways. So in front of light vowels, the CH sounds, as you see, like a kitty cat, but a mean, hissing kitty cat. So when we talk about that mind-body connection again, so coming back to the theory piece that I talked about earlier, is like when we put our body to the sound, making a movement, it will be retained easier by the student. So sure, the theory would be, all right, if there's a CH after a light vowel, so E and I, then the sound makes sh. The students hear it, you say, hey, I did my job, I taught it. However, will the student remember it tomorrow, the next day? Probably not. So I always tell funny stories with the sounds. And so this is one of them. So I tell my kids to take out their paw and to, get out their claws and then to make the sh sound. To pretend they're a mad kitty cat and they're doing ish, sh, sh. Or when we have dark vowels like A, O, and U, I tell them it sounds like a fire-spitting dragon. And it's really hard, especially for some speakers when they learn German, they don't have the guttural sounds as Germans do. So trying to teach them and show them on a map how the mouth moves and whatnot doesn't make a lot of sense to young learners. So again, like telling them a little story. So hey, imagine you are a dragon and you're spitting fire. So you really produce the sound in the back of your throat. The again, we make this movement to like to really make the fire go across the room. So when we then read text in the classroom and students mispronounce words, I don't even have to say anything. I just have to do or and then they already know it's like, oh, it's a kitty cat sound. And that really just helps. And again, that is already drama-based in a drama-based activity. I mean, it's very simple like that. It's like this, that, like putting emotion to a sound. So I'm giving you an example of what I have my students do. So usually they had learned how to introduce themselves, and then they have to show off their pronunciation skills by reciting a tongue twister. Yep, that was very fast, and you could hear the student breathe. So again, here I, checked for the sound, and I gave the student feedback of how they do with the sounds. I know how you feel usually with the students' ability of knowing the ABCs maybe a year or 2 later. So oftentimes they forget that J is a J or X, Y, say X, Y, Z. And so I like to play the alphabet game. So I would use maybe something like this as a uh, like a break, just like a little like activity. At my school, we have had 20-minute long lessons once a week. And so I usually try around like 70 minutes, not necessarily to do a break, but to do an active break. So not to waste the time. So this is the alphabet game. as you see, the pen is skipping around. I say stop.
Hi, Melanie. The audio is a little bit low on some of your media clips.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I can explain it. So what it is, so you give the students a pen in the hand and they're handing it to the next person. You say stop and then you tell them a letter and they have to come up with 5 words for these for this letter. So B, also B would be Buch, Boden, Bluse, and I can't think of it too, Blau and Bist, for instance. And it's just like a short little break and just encouraging students to review the alphabet. And so probably what I would do in class is to like the person who just listed the 5 words, I would ask them then to, you know, call out stop for the next round and tell them the letter that they have to be using. I don't know. Here we go. All right, let's continue. So some drama-based getting to know each other activities. So in year 1, just like it's my second lesson, I already want my students to learn, you know, some phrases and some like questions. Very easy here. And so as you see, I have that up on the board, and then the students have to slap their thighs and say, Ich heiße, and then the name. So for me it would be Ich heiße Melanie und du, and then the next person would say that as well. And again, so for students to, you know, like really have the motion with the words attached to it. So next time when we have to do it without motions, they might remember, and if not, you again just have to hint at it and they can recall it very easily. Do you know how I can turn up the volume, Teresa?
I'm not sure if you go to your own sound settings, Melanie, if you can kind of turn the volume up more.
I don't know. Let's see.
Or if at the edge of this video, there's kind of that little speakerphone, see if you can drag it up all the way. Yeah.
So Zwei Tiers in Action, this was last year at the German soccer camp that I organized here in Chandler. And this is one of the activities. And here you can see it in action. And so here, I think it's a perfect example where you see, oh, he said, oh, I messed up. You know, nobody's mad. He's not really mad at himself for not having done it correctly. Everybody's very understanding and encouraging and gives him enough time to retry it. And two, when you look at the faces, I mean, everybody is happy doing it. I mean, I have not had an experience yet with a crying student, and that with different age groups. So I talked earlier to when I mentioned about how to establish a drama-based classroom about rituals and routines and rules. So one of the rituals that we have is let the scene begin. So whenever my students have to go on stage, so in the middle of the classroom, they know they have 3 seconds time to get ready for their scene. And so what we do is like the whole class yells out, 3, 2, 1, Licht, and then the light switch is turned on, and then the spotlight is on the students, and they have to start acting out. So the nice thing is too, so besides giving the students who are acting out time to get ready for it, or like the 3 seconds getting ready for it, it also creates focus and science from their classmates. And everybody can just yell one more time, get it out of their system, yeah, and then just focus when the activity is going on. So another getting to know activity. I know how it is for you, but oftentimes in year 2, my students are mixed in new class formations, and so they don't know each other yet. And just as an easy, you know, back after the summer, like little activity, we all sat in a circle and everybody has to introduce themselves very briefly. So you could ask them to say their name. So, hallo, ich heiße Melanie. And then they have to come up with a word association to the first letter of their name. So Melanie wie Mustang. And then you could also ask them to attach a movement to it. So Mustang, not the car, it's the horse. I love to ride horse in my free time. And so in the second example that I have further down is you could also ask them to tell them that, so everybody's to tell their name to everybody and then attach it to a hobby. So hallo, ich heiße Melanie, ich reite Pferde. Hello, my name is Melanie, I love to ride horses. And then you do the whatever horse you ride movement. Just like, and so the next person next to you has to repeat, sie heißt Melanie, sie reitet gern Pferde, ich heiße whatever the name is and whatever the hobby that person is doing. And so it's kind of a chain movement. So the third person then has to repeat the other people's names and their hobbies and have to make the movements. And that way, very quickly, they know each other by name and also what their favorite activity is. This is, I would say, probably my ultimate favorite activity of all times. I call it Mauerblümchen oder Rampensau. This was the name that I used for this presentation because I really enjoy it. So in year 3, when your classes are mixed again and new, you could put partner students up with each other and they have to get to know each other. So they have maybe 5 minutes time where they have to tell each other about their interests, what they do in their free time, their family situation or whatever else they would like to talk about. So then the challenge is that you have this envelope and the two presenters, the two partners who just talk to each other, they have to come to the front of the classroom. Again, you start with a 3, 2, 1, Licht. And then one of the partners has to present the other person either as Rampensau or as Mauerblümchen. So Mauerblümchen we know is a wallflower, and Rampensau, there's not really good translation for it, but that's usually somebody who likes to be in the center of attention, who doesn't fear being in the spotlight and on stage. So while that student presents the other student's biography either as Rampensau or Mauerblümchen, the rest of the class has to guess under which kind of mood or tone the presenter presented this other student's biography. So they have to guess at the end of the presentation, oh, you did it Rampensau style or you did it Mauerblümchen style. So it's kind of a fun activity. And again, just making sure that students stay engaged and focus on these mini presentations. And again, they're learning 2 new words, Rampensau and Mauerblümchen. So another ritual that I have with my students is also beginning of the school year. Every class has to agree on a class applause that I use with them. So whenever somebody performed something or somebody did a good job with an activity, we have an applause. And so these are some classic examples like the popcorn or the firework. Pew! It's just like some fun little things you can do with your students. Another cool activity, and I have video for you for this one, is the cursed 7. So in the video I'm going to share with you in just a second, you see a group of students who just learned how to count up to 10, and now they have to play this game. So the game, in that game, you're not allowed to say the number 7. And if you say it's 7, you're out of the game. And yeah, the circle of students gets smaller and smaller and smaller till we have a winner. And I'm going to show you the video. And make sure it's loud this time, or louder.
Melanie, there was a suggestion about the earbuds. Like that might be the reason why maybe we don't have sound from the...
Ah, okay. Gosh darn it. Shall I just try and unplug it?
I don't know if this is the solve the situation.
See anything? Okay, so he said the wrong number and he's now out of the game. And so as you see, it goes smaller and smaller and smaller till only one student is left. So another fun activity is counting to 20 made extra difficult. So again, when we go back to that theory, the embodied theory, embodied cognition theory, it's really important also when we talk about acting that people are aware of their bodies. So not just gestures and mimics and postures, but also role taking. So when you have students improvise a scene on stage, it's not that one student dominates the scene. And so this is one of the first activities where they realize, okay, we need to take turns and be aware of people's spaces and whatnot. So here you have all students again stand in a circle, and they have to count up to 20 or 30, whatever you want to do. And so the difficulty here is you don't know who says when that number. And when two students say a number at the same time, you start again from scratch with number 1. And so again, it's a very good way, for the consecutive day after they first learned how to count to 10, the next day to do 20, and then maybe or to 30 even. And they just have to, watch each other's turns. This is a good activity for, when you have your unit of like hobbies and free time activities. The easy version is you have 2 students play with each other. Again, you can either have students work in small groups or as a big class. You have one student ask the other one, hey, what are you doing? Student number 2 says, I'm writing a letter. And the student is acting it out by doing what the activity is. I'm writing a letter. And then he says, hey, what are you doing? The other person says, I'm cooking. And hey, what are you doing? And then student 2 would say, I am playing basketball. So again, we have that the movement attached to the activity that we're doing. And that way, the vocabulary words are retained more effectively down the road. So that is the easy version. If you want to make it a little harder, and the harder version is a little frustrating at times with students, but I think it's still worthwhile. It usually takes them like 3, 4, 5 minutes even to figure out what they have to do, because it's a little confusing. You have to have really the vocab down and have maximized concentration. So again, partner 1 says, hey, what are you doing? Partner 2 says, I play tennis, and partner 1 is acting it out this time. Then partner 2 says, hey, what are you doing? Partner 1 is still playing tennis, but says, now I'm baking cookies. So what happens here is when the person says, I'm baking cookies, they start like baking cookies with their hands instead of, like continuing playing tennis. So this is like the difficult part where they acting out something else than what they're actually saying. It is fun. Again, it produces a lot of laughter. And I would say this is one of the activities where I see sometimes frustration coming up. I always tell them, hey, it's okay. It's just a question of like trying it over and over and over again. And then maybe just reusing the same hobbies till you finally figured out how to do this activity well. I like this one. This one actually is one that we had learned at the theater workshop in Germany. It's called Siamese twins. So students work with each other, so 2 students with each other in a partnership, and they have to retell their daily routines, either in the perfect tense or in the present tense, whatever you would like to review with them. So partner number 1 says, this morning we woke up and we stretched. And so when they're Siamese twin, the second person is like hooked, has their arm hooked with the other person, so they're actually attached to each other. So partner 1 says, this morning we woke up and we stretched. And then the other Siamese twin says, yes, we woke up and we stretched and then we rolled out of bed. Then the other partner says, yes, we rolled out of bed and we fell onto the floor. Yes, we fell onto the floor and so they're just like taking turns. And the nice thing is by repeating what the other person just had said, it gives them enough time to think about an activity that they would like to add on. So this is a very good activity just to, practice saying the same thing over and over and over again. And again, it usually takes a little bit for them to figure out the pattern, but once they have it, it's pretty entertaining. And I always tell them just to add the movements to what their morning routine looks like. So in German 2, my students have the opportunity for the first time to act out a play in front of a real audience. So this is St. Martin. The students learned for like a week, or not a week, but it's a whole week mini unit where the students first learn about who St. Martin was and what he did and whatnot. They learn about lantern walks. You see back here in the background, the students had created lanterns. the geese lanterns. If you're unfamiliar, the geese betrayed Saint Martin, and this is how he was found and turned into a bishop. And so these students right here are acting it out, and I know you guys can't hear it, but I just want to show you a little snippet. At least you can see them acting it. Here's Saint Martin. So we have here somebody who tells the story, and then the students are acting it out. And so we talked about the chorus, the Greek chorus here. And so she says, and everybody says, Martin was a good man. And so all the actors say it with each other. So I was trying to bring a little bit of like, a little bit of background knowledge to the students as well. So starting then in like German 2, or maybe even in the 3rd year, I do something called as atmospheric reading. So usually what that is, and this here more of an adapted version, is like, reading a text slower or faster in a different tone of voice, going down with your voice or talking very high. You can really work on intonation with the students. So in the German language, for instance, our voice goes up at the end of questions. So you can bring it in right there with the students. So in this instance, this was actually my German Saturday class I taught with intermediate German students. And we had read a poem, and the students were then asked to write poems about what they do or what they would like to do in their free time with their family members. And so they came up with these really cool poems, and I wanted to review also adjectives and adverbs with them. And so I asked them, what type of mood you can be in, what kind of emotions can you feel? And so let's see. And I would like for you, I know, can you not hear anything, or is it just really quiet? I know. So I hope you can hear it. If you can maybe put in the chat also an idea of what you think the mood is in. I know it's German, but maybe you can still guess the mood from how it sounds. So I asked the students to give me some adjectives and adverbs of how you can feel or how something can be. And so I said, oh, you can be in love, shocked, afraid, panicked, pensive, shy, horrified, and whatnot. And so then, as you can see here in the little piece of paper, I wrote down they wrote down the adjectives, or the adverbs, and then they had to draw an adverb, and they had to read the poem in that mood, basically, with that emotion. And the rest of the class had to guess which emotion it was. So let's see if you can hear this, and then maybe have a guess.
Yeah, for this one, I don't think any sound's coming through.
No sound is coming. Oh, so sad.
So someone suggested under the share screen setting, there's one on sharing computer sound. I haven't seen that before.
I don't see it either. More of like, let's see.
Or if you go into like the thing where it says you can either mute yourself or it's the microphone. I don't know if there's also kind of needing to, audio settings.
Share her sound. Angelica is also suggesting in which way share her sound. Angelica.
I know, audio settings. Should I try that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to see what it would look like in Zoom.
Could we unmute welcome one, Teresa?
Yeah, let me.
If you guys may want to figure out from your end, so we don't run out of time, and then just tell me if you figure out how to do it. Just tell me, and I would be happy.
Yeah, so I can help. When you go to share screen now. Go to now unshare the screen. Now go to share screen, and then before you click unshare on your left-hand side, there's a corner say share the sound with computer. Click there before you click share.
Okay, so share sound or share screen?
With computer.
I don't
share
see
sound
it.
with computer. Do you have in Zoom? If you use Zoom, there's a place say share this. Okay, let me So you have a place you can share the sound with computer in your left corner there. That's a little square, and then your share is in this right hand side. Before you click a share, you click a very little square. Click share the sound with computer.
Yeah, I don't see that.
You don't see that?
Mm-mm.
So before you share, you click on your screen first.
Share computer sound. I got it. Yes, okay. I hope so.
Okay.
Thank you for bearing with me. I hope that this is working now. Okay, let's try it. And if it's not working, I'm sorry.
Sprechen mit meiner Frau.
Yes. Oh Gott.
Essen in einem guten Restaurant. Lesen ein gutes Buch. Spielen in einem Chor. Reisen in den Bergen. Fotografieren die Wüste. Klavier spielen. Kaffee trinken. Mit meiner Freude. Forschung von Theologie. Sonntagnachmittag. Die Zeitung am Morgen.
All right, so he read it in a pensive mode. This was his adverb. Let's go and check her out, what her emotion was.
Reisen, lesen, schreiben, zu lachen mit meinen Kindern, in der Natur wandern, mit meiner Hunde spielen, Gartenarbeit, machen, essen.
So she does a good job, you know, like acting it out, even how she feels, not just like changing her voice, but really like using her body and like bodily sounds, like to, you know, express how bored she is. Hanging out with my children, you know, so boring. So it's kind of fun to do, because again, it takes away that anxiety for, oh my gosh, I have to present my poem now in front of the whole class. Again, by like giving, you know, the student kind of that, you know, reading out in a certain emotion takes away from it, because everybody's like so hyper focused on figuring out, oh, which adverb did she use? And so it really helps the students, again, like just to open up and to present freely. Another one that I really like to do with like the second or third year is like a dramatic performance of a poem. And I chose Der Radwechsel from Bertolt Brecht here, because I had to do that at the workshop back in Germany. It was a lot of fun. So we had, we were put in groups of 3 students, and we had, everybody got a different, every group got a different poem. And then we had to create like background noises while the other person was like performing the poem. So you have like one presenter, one person who performs, I'm not just like reciting, but the person has to perform it, like act it out, act the content of each line out. And then the other people had to come with a background noise. So ich sitze am Straßenrand. So I sit on the side of the road. So you could have like car sounds in the background, you know, so or I don't know, like just be creative and have the students be creative and come up with the sound that they associate with the different lines. And then also like when he changes the wheel, what sounds could that make? What sounds do tools make and whatnot? This is kind of a fun activity as well. This is, so Standbild, Tableau, still frame. There are a lot of names for this in the various languages. Sometimes in the English language, people know of Tableau, but still frame is maybe another one that you know of this. So I figured I'm going to share like a task that I have with my students here. So the students read an article in stations. I know how you usually do your reading with your students, but I feel like it's important to, you know, be active and not have passive learners, because when you just give them a newspaper article and they're sitting on their chairs and they're reading it maybe with a partner or even with a group, I feel like they're not as engaged than if you have to, as if they have to go from station to station and then read the text, summarize the information, answer the questions about the text with their group members, and then after like 5 minutes or however long you choose the paragraph to be, they switch to the next station, they do the same activity. So as each group goes from station to station, on a big index card, they write the answers to the questions, a short little summary of the article, and then they leave it at the station but turn around so the next group can't see it. And then at the end, after they, work to all the different stations, they come back to their original station. And at their original station, they are asked to pick one main event in that paragraph and to turn it into a still frame or a Tableau or Standbild, whatever you prefer. So the students work on putting together these still frames. And then the classmates first have a chance to guess or to explain what they see represented in that still frame. So, and then a follow-up activity after that would be to have talking still frames. So not just the students who explaining what they see, but then have each individual character within that still frame say a couple sentences about the scene that they're portraying. It's just again, like in a very interactive way to have students engage with the text. So the next before we go to the next activity, I would like to share another ritual with you. So oftentimes when students have to perform, they don't want to do it. And so they're a little shy. And so what I have them play is like Schere, Stein, Papier, rock, paper, scissors. And whoever loses, loses and has to, be the one who acts out the scene or does the activity in front of the class. So we had that problem here in this activity. So it was between this group or that group who had to go first. And so they did rock, paper, scissors, and that group lost. So based on the newspaper article, I had the students work with and come up with these still frames. The follow-up activity after we, as a whole group, clarified the content of the article, I had them create role biographies. So the task was to imagine how that student, that characters, life is going to be in the future. So in this article, it was about a boy that stepped on a mine and lost a limb. And luckily he was brought to Germany by the Red Cross, and, he, like got a prosthetic leg. And so he loved to play soccer and whatnot. And now they had to pretend 20 years later that boy is being interviewed and whatnot. And they had to come up with questions they would ask that student or that main character in that interview. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun because, the student who's maybe not as equipped with the language has the questions in front of them. They can, be maybe a little flexible and go into more detail, ask some follow-up questions. And then the student who's more fluent can take over the role of that, character and answer these questions as the character from the article. So last but not least, it's the actual theater performance. So every year, back in Indiana, I went to Valparaiso University with my students to perform an adapted play there. And luckily here in Arizona, we have a theater competition as well at Arizona State University. And this was our performance of the Magic Flute. This was actually the Magic Flute. The year before that, we did Wilhelm Tell. And yeah, I'm going to give you an idea of what my students did. Oh, it's not working. I guess it's just a picture now. Oh, I don't know. Anyways, so right here they adapted a play that we had read and worked with in class to a 10-minute long adapted theater play that they were acting out in front of a jury. And again, it's like kind of a cool experience after like 3-4 years, working with drama-based activities in the classroom. If you have a chance to, act out a real play in German in front of a real audience. And I think, again, it's that purpose always. We always have to think of a purpose. So why the heck are you doing what you're doing with your students? And so sure, it's fun to read a play in class, but if you can turn that into an actual performance at the end, it's even that much better. So some closing words. So how can drama-based activities be used in the classroom? I think we clearly saw that there are many different ways how to do it. You can either introduce new concepts, check for knowledge, and maybe extend students' learning. And then through these constructivist practices, we aim at inviting students to actively participate in the language learning process through kinesthetic and interactive experiences. As we have also seen through these examples, theater-based pedagogy cultivates many cognitive skills, such as language and communication skills, decision-making capabilities, creativity and imagination, collaboration skills, and problem-solving skills. And sure enough, creative thinking skills too, because you have to think outside of the box when you act out scenes. I would like to invite you right now to a question and answer session. So any questions you have for me, please feel free and put them in the chat. And yeah, I will be happy to answer them.
So we have one from Mary Teresa about, do you use theater-inspired activities for world language assessment? And if so, which ones do you use for assessment?
Yeah, what I do, I use integrated performance assessments in my class. And so, I mean, I guess you could, you know, I mean, oftentimes it's a dialogue between two people. I guess you could maybe, after you read a book with your students, or maybe a short story, you could have, you know, students again act as the fictitious characters and have a conversation about, I don't know, like whatever they would like to do with each other, and they have to be in persona. So what I probably would have them do is create like a biography of the character first, the writing part, create a biography, tell me about who that main character is, what their traits are and whatnot, what their internal feelings look like. And then the next activity would be a kind of that presentational or the interpersonal speaking part would be where they have maybe to speak with two characters with each other to come up with a solution to an issue as it arises maybe in the short story or in the book. Okay, any other questions?
Let's see, we have a question about, so how do you encourage students that don't feel very comfortable about performing publicly?
Yeah, I mean, as I have to say, it very seldomly happens because it's really in German 3 or 4 that we, as a go-to to ASU, for instance, to act out. And if they are not willing necessarily to take a major part in it, then they are responsible for the props and for the costumes, and maybe more like the bystander or being the souffleuse. You know, they get a different type of job. But usually, as I only had maybe like one student I can think of right now in like 12 years who would not be willing to, like, you know, act in front of an audience. As I said earlier too, I mean, I do it so early on, like all these like acting and like silly activities, that the students are really used to it.
We have 5 more questions.
Yeah.
So one of the questions is, so when you are preparing for theater for competitions, how do you find good pieces that are short and interesting enough?
Yeah, to be honest, all the plays I have used so far are all self-written. So either by students. So when we did Emil Detektive in 2012 in Indiana, we read the book with each other, and then I had each group like turn a chapter into a screenplay. And so they were only allowed to have one page to ensure that we, you know, get that theater play done in 10 minutes. So it's all student-generated work. And again, I know, I think maybe one of the issues that, you know, I could see with that is like, oh, you would be like wasting so much time, because usually when I work with a theater play, like the Wilhelm Tell, for instance, I mean, that took us like 3 weeks to read and, you know, do all the activities with. And then the writing, the adapting of the play was another week, and then rehearsing. So what we did, so it is a long project, like takes like 5 to 6 weeks. But interestingly enough, the students get super excited about like performing in front of a real audience, and they really want to show off their skills.
We have a question about, so, you know, since you're a language teacher, how do you handle correcting them, especially when they're kind of performing in front of each other? How do you handle correcting them?
I don't correct. I just feel like, you know, it's already, you know, as I said earlier too, stepping out of your comfort zone and then correcting. What I do afterwards, or like so let's say we're rehearsing for our performance and a student maybe makes mistakes. So usually what we do, we act out scenes by scene, and then everybody else who's not in the scene gives feedback to the students. And I take additional notes, and I give the student additional notes, and I do the one-on-one coaching. So if they're maybe not putting the right intonation on a word, you know, like the wrong emphasis and whatnot, that I usually work with them on how to do it right. But I'm not doing it in front of everybody else. I think it's not the time to do that.
Mm-hmm. So we have a couple questions about how do you assess, especially student-generated work? So especially when it seems like one student might be inclined to write a lot more than some of the other students, how do you assess that?
Yeah, to be honest, when we write the theater plays, it doesn't count for a grade. I mean, it is. I know it's for me. I am not a big fan for doing everything for a grade. So when we write the plays, it's really for the aspect of performing and then potentially winning, first place.
Hi, Teresa. I have like two questions in one. That is, how would you encourage students that are not feeling comfortable to perform publicly? This is from one participant, and the other one, if the student is overly anxious, do you have him or her do the performance at a different time
Exactly.
without
So
audience?
yeah, so exactly. So I had a couple of students who felt extremely uncomfortable, especially in year one, like acting out or performing in front of another class. So when I don't know, for the ones who are familiar with Uwe Kind, we do a lot of Uwe Kind songs, songs with a lot of movement and whatnot. And I had a couple of students who felt uncomfortable, singing along or making the movements and whatnot. And I'm okay with this. However, the student then has to come up with an alternative to show me that they are participating, not just checking out. So for instance, if we have like acting out a dialogue or whatever, or doing a presentational piece, the alternative would be then to record on Flipgrid and submitting it that way. So that way the student can do it several times at home, over and over and over again, till they're satisfied with the result, and then submit that for a grade. But I would say most of the time the drama-based activities are really not there for grading. It's really just there for the students to build, a certain comfort with assurance, I would say, with themselves and being able to speak in front of a group eventually. I would say also with like students who have a problem like being in front of a class. I mean, then they do it with a partner, in front of a partner, the presentation, or in a small group. I don't really do a lot of presentation in front of the class anyways.
Okay, so we have a question about for the plays where students perform, do they choose their own roles, or are those assigned by you?
No, they choose their own roles, or they make suggestions. Usually the first one is like, hey, who would like to take over a certain role? And if we then have some leftover roles that nobody wants to fill, then I ask the classmates who they think a good fit would be for that role.
Let's see, another question. So when you work with students who have different abilities, maybe disabilities or special education, what type of strategies do you use to include those students?
Yeah, I mean, like I would say, like everybody does it to their best ability, and if somebody is limited with, like I'd say they sit in a wheelchair and they would not be able to do the certain movements, I mean, obviously that would be acceptable, or if they, cannot write, then we have Google Voice, for instance, the students can implement. I really try to figure out a way with the student to make sure that they can, nicely progress along the proficiency.
Let's see, we had a specific question for the Standbild activity. Do you use the same text in all of the stations, or do you use different texts?
Or with this, like the reading stations for the newspaper article. So I take the newspaper article into like smaller chunks basically. So it's maybe like one, as if the article is nicely written, then like let's say it's 5 paragraphs, then each station is 1 paragraph, and the students then have to read through the text and answer the questions and summarize it. And sometimes what I do too is like, if an article is too difficult, but I feel it fits into the theme that we're currently working on, I might just adapt it, rewrite it, make it a little easier for the lower levels, and for the higher levels, where I feel like there are certain like lack of vocabulary words, I annotate the text, and that usually works pretty well.
Let's see, any additional questions? Let's see, oh, we have another one.
Okay.
So how do you manage balance among the different roles? How do you manage trying to get an equal amount of speaking for all or most of the students?
I know, that's a little difficult because, obviously there's a protagonist who is in most scenes in the theater play. Usually one of the stronger students takes over that one. So I'm a little bit in the dilemma. I have a German 345 AP IB dual enrollment class that's usually out of like 12 to 15 students large. And so usually the students who are in the as IB higher level range of ability, they usually take on the main leads in the place because it's easy for them, and they feel already like comfortable enough with the language that they say, hey, I can take on that major role and have the most amount of text. And again, as I said, it's not necessarily, the performance is not for the assessment's sake. The performance is really, hey, we have a field trip, we're getting off campus, we're hanging out with each other, have an opportunity to get to know each other better, and having to perform this in front of a real audience. So that's I would say that's the appeal.
Any other question from the audience?
Let's see, how much do you expect or want the students to stay in the target language when you're doing rehearsals?
That's always kind of another dilemma. So in year one, every year I get a couple of emails from parents where they complain about me speaking too much German. I mean, sure, it's easy for me because I'm a native speaker to stay in the target language, but I always ask the parents back to say, hey, would you complain if your child doesn't do enough math in math, you know? And so usually in year two, it's understood, even if it's like passing period, but you're stepping one foot into my classroom, you need to switch into German. And then if there's, you know, a limitation space because you don't know the vocabulary words, then you can do Denglish. But I really encourage the students just to stay in German as much as they can. And then starting in year three, no English at all anymore. And they are usually able to circumscribe words, you know, and that's not a problem. And it's again like the nice thing with draw-based pedagogy. You know, the kids are used to like using the mimics, that gestures, you know, or grab the pen and paint or draw something on the board to explain themselves. So I think they're really equipped with the tools to be able to, you know, like circumscribe or use their body to make sense of what they want to say.
Okay, we're starting to get a lot of thank yous. Thank you for sharing. I can see some cool ways to use this in my level 2 and 3 classes. So I think we're having some folks that are starting to head out as we get to 5 o'clock Eastern here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining my webinar today. I really appreciate it. If you ever would like to, you know, reach out to me to get more information, feel free to write me an email or befriend me on Facebook. I would be more than happy, you know, to advise you.